Personally, I'm an absolute addict on TikTok, and the second I see an advert, I will throw the phone away. And there's still a place for adverts, but I think on social, it's very much like it's an invasive thing, an advert.
Today, I am so happy to have Isaac Martin. Previously had a video at Social Chain.
We were all sort of one family, very much on the same sort of mission.
Now, Director of Video and Creative Innovation at FlightStory.
We will push you too far, and we want you to push us back.
Why do you do what you do?
I very much enjoy having a somewhat naive attitude that anything is possible.
You know, the technological side of things. What is possible?
In my latest video, there's a lot of footage of me talking to the camera, but I'm entirely made up as an AI avatar.
Still a rock star.
Oh, thank you. I think for very specific things, such as Will Smith looking exactly like Will Smith, eating spaghetti in a certain way, it's always, at least for the time being, going to be easier to do that for real.
What is authenticity these days?
The second that you start to chase a trend, you're already behind, first of all. That's also not authentic. I think authentic on social is...
Hi everyone, welcome to Unmatched. Today I am so happy to have Isaac Martin with me as a guest on the show. Isaac is Director of Video and Creative Innovation at FlightStory, one of the most innovative marketing agencies out there. Previously had a video at Social Chain, and he's one of the most creative guys that I know in the industry. Isaac, welcome to Unmatched.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to need you to introduce me everywhere I go from now.
I know. You just take this piece and you just add it to anything that you do, and it will work.
I love it. Yeah, it's such a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's something that I've been wanting to do for a while. So thank you for taking the time, although it's quite late. Isaac, we have a tradition on the show, which is the first question is always, what's your story and why do you do what you do? So I'd love to hear from you on that one.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, if I go back to say when I went to college, I was a sort of the cliche, didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. Started a college course in art and design simply because my friends also chose that course. Didn't really care whether I was going to go anywhere with it. I was kind of a creative person, kind of a computer nerd at the time. And so there were some creative elements in there that I could enjoy at the same time as having a good time with my friends. Instead of going off to university like everyone else at my age, me and my friends, quite lazily now that I think about it, stayed on and did another course. This time we started a band and we did a music practice course, and with the aim to be famous rock stars.
Wow, so it's not very far off. I feel like you're almost there.
Thank you.
You're almost there, but not in the field of music, just more in the field of innovation and marketing. Still a rock star.
Oh, thank you. So then I just decided I wanted to become a journalist, and I wanted to be like the music interviewer of my town. And so I started a magazine, started interviewing people in bands, grew some very, very slight success and somewhat fame with that. And even went over to Germany on for a documentary for a small band following their tour, and then went to uni and did that. And that's where that's sort of like the start of my career trajectory to where I am now. Long story, long. But I think journalism's a good place to start for myself because, journalism's very much like social. And that's ultimately the area I ended up in. Journalism's about finding the story, about connecting with people on a sociology level, trying to understand what people want to read. And so when I finished uni and the journalism is kind of a dying industry, I quickly realized that the pivot into social was exactly what I needed to do. So I did that, worked around a few places, jumped around sort of doing every area in social. But I always sort of drifted towards that creative side of things. And then, yeah, ultimately landed at Social Chain. And Social Chain was really the first place that really encouraged me to like dig up all of that and start to use that in my work. And so 6 months in, I was promoted to head of live. And it was very much sort of they really championed that position for me, sort of as a like a new innovative position within the company. Head of live, the live streams were still fairly new at the time. It wasn't a very, I think I may have been one of the first sort of head of lives about it. It wasn't really a position up until that point. And then, yeah, it just continued there. I eventually became head of innovation. But for me, it always sort of, it's an interesting point when I became head of innovation, because I ended up doing things like optimizing somebody's spreadsheet, which is useful, certainly, but it's not, it wasn't why I was passionate about
It's
innovation.
not as creative.
No,
Right.
exactly. And that's the thing. It was the creative element that I was passionate about.
So just as a little backup story for everyone who's listening in and doesn't know what Social Chain is. Social Chain is a social media agency that
Yeah,
was founded by Steven Bartlett, right?
that's right. Yeah. Back in, I think they founded it in 2014 or 15.
So you're pretty much at the beginning of their journey
Yeah,
as well as a company.
it was
And
very much early days for sure. There was a bit of a boom after I joined, I'd say.
so I can imagine that in those early days must have been such energy, around the office, and so many things that you guys were doing and testing, and you are like ahead of time in so many ways. What are the memories that you have from those days?
Yeah, they were crazy times, for sure. I'd known about Social Chain about 6 months before I joined. And then as soon as I knew, I was watching Steve's vlogs. He was vlogging every day, which was really exciting at the time. And it just seemed like the dream place to be. So when I got there, I was so excited to begin. And it was exactly as it appeared to be. It was just, for me, it was very much, I remember on my first day, I was shown around by this amazing guy. His name's Cello. And he said to me, "You'll come to find that we're like one big," and I thought he was going to say family. And he said school. And that was very much what it was like
That's
back.
very funny. What does that mean, though?
So what he meant by that, I think, and how I took that was that it was very like there was like sort of like the jocks and then like the nerds and like
So
like the
like
on.
little tribes
Yeah,
within the different.
very much like a sort of a cliche American high school.
Yeah.
But the one difference was that we were all sort of one family. And I do hate that expression, but back in the day at Social Train, it did very much feel like that. The reason I loved working there was the people, and we were very much all sort of very much on the same sort of mission. You just felt that you felt like everyone was trying to be the best, and it really like encouraged you to do the same.
So now, fast forward to today. You're now working at FlightStory, which, again, it's a marketing agency founded by Steven Bartlett, co-founded by Oliver Yonchev. So you're back with some of the people that used to work at Social Chain. What brought you to FlightStory, and what are you guys doing there?
Hmm. So myself and Jason Fisher, who's our studio director, we were still at Social Chain at the time. Steve had been talking to Jason probably around maybe 6 months or so, as far as I remember, just sort of toying with the idea of Flight Story, but it never seemed to be something that was actually going to happen. And then it seemed to be within the space of a few weeks, it was going to happen. We were going to be a part of it, and then we were a part of it. So it was a really exciting time. And I mean, it's interesting. We've been through a lot of phases of sort of figuring out who we were in the world. We started very much on the back of the retail investor space. helping companies to IPO. And then we changed again and again and again. And where we are now, anyway, is very much sort of along the lines of a traditional marketing and creative agency. For ourselves in Manchester here, we're a sort of an all-round creative agency. And yeah, one of the things we really focus on is storytelling and helping brands get their story out there. Myself and Jason Fisher are very much storytellers at heart. Again, I go back to journalism. It's all about telling somebody's story. And as somebody who's worked in video for over 10 years now, a question I've been asked a lot is like, what's my favorite film? It's a very simple thing. And I've asked that a lot in interviews myself. It's just something, someone interested in video, I always ask that question. And for me, my favorite films I've come to learn are always true stories. And I think that's where my passion for telling stories for brands and companies comes from as well, because they're true stories. And I think true stories are the most powerful and the most engaging, and people can connect with them that way. Yeah.
We'll go back to the conversation in a moment, but for now, I've got a game changer for your content strategy. Now, look, the one question I'm being asked over and over again is, how do you manage to have a full-time job with all the responsibility that comes with, and post content and record a podcast and keeping it all together? Now, no, I don't always have it together. But when I started all this, I did struggle until I discovered a tool that completely changed the game for me. So let me share. It's called Plannable, and it's the best content planning tool out there. Now, Plannable has been my content planning tool for a whole year now, but I was so excited when they reached out to sponsor the podcast. Now, picture this. I'm planning and crafting my posts, and I'm seeing them exactly as they'll appear live across all the different platforms I'm on, all from one single dashboard. I mean, mind blowing. And you can easily collaborate with your team, get content approved in literally seconds. And that is the beauty of Plannable. Now, you can head over to plannable.io and sign up for a free plan today, and you will absolutely love it. You can trust me. And here's the cherry on the top. The lovely team at Plannable is giving you now 30% off the first 3 months when you upgrade to any plan that fits your needs. All you need to do is use the code Plannable30 at checkout, and you're all set to transform the way you manage your marketing content. So next time you wonder how I do it all, well, here's the real answer. I don't. I get help from Plannable. This podcast is all about, telling stories and kind of figuring out what people are all about, and also what brands are all about. So, I've had the pleasure to work with you guys, and it's been a really nice experience. And I'm curious because I have seen that your slogan is, "We keep brands at the forefront of what's possible." And I always wanted to figure out what that's all about. What is it that actually keeps brands at the forefront of what's possible? And then what is possible?
That's a great question. I think to answer the first part, what keeps brands at the forefront of possible, in my experience, is the attitude of always asking questions, and those questions need to be, can we do this? Can we do that? And then the second part of that is, I suppose, working with people who not necessarily have the answers to those questions, but can go and look for the answers for those questions. And you constantly hear people say you've got to fail 10 times to succeed, and you got to fail, fail, fail. And that's 100% true. But for me, it's always been, you do have to fail, but you have to never give up. More specifically, you have to, sometimes the end is not in sight. You come back to something 6 months later, and you finally, out of the blue, find the solution. And that's something that we definitely do. I mean, it's something that I've done for years now, all the way back to Social Chain. And it's kind of what we really spearheaded when we started FlightStory, was taking that essence of having like very direct communication with our clients, and always being open to being asked questions, searching for answers, and providing something that positions them in a place where they either come up with something that's first, or something that's a better version of something, or just a new way of telling a story. So yeah, that's very much sort of.
Are brands asking the right questions though? Or are you the ones trying to like push the conversation forward all the time?
Yeah, we one thing we regularly say is we will push you too far, and we want you to push us back, but we'll never start from a place where you're going to be comfortable. We're always going to push you outside of your comfort zones. And if you want to push us back, then sure, we can sort of find a middle ground. But there's just no point in going up to the point where you've already been as a brand.
So that's what makes me very curious about the slogan, because especially the last part, which says, the forefront of what's possible. And the question is, what is really possible out there that we don't know? There's a quote that I say all the time and I love, which is, you don't know what you don't know. And I think it holds true so many times, because there's so much to know and it's not possible for you to know everything. That's one side of it. But on the other side, you can never stop asking the right questions, and you can never stop being curious about what's out there. So I think the broad question, and I understand it's a very, very broad question, we can just kind of like touch on it top line, but considering everything that is going on in the world, everything that is going on social media, all the advances there, all the advances on the technological side of things, what is possible that brands don't see right now and they should be seeing?
Mm. I mean, to answer a fairly complicated question quite simply, I very much enjoy having a somewhat naive attitude that anything is possible. And it sounds very simple and sort of uneducated. But that attitude has always pushed me to look at for things where people think they already have the answer for it, for things where people think, no, that's not possible. I've just thought, why is it not possible? And I like to I don't like to base my answers off of things that other people have done before. I like to do my own research. I like to try things firsthand. And so, yeah, firstly, I would say I personally believe anything is possible. There's 100 different ways to do something differently than the traditional way. Sometimes there's not one app that does what you want it to do. Sometimes there's 10 apps that where they work together, they do what you want it to do. And behind the scenes, it's an absolute mess. But what you present to the public and to your viewers is a polished version of exactly what you want them to see. So yeah, and I think what brands should be looking for what's possible is very much sort of, I guess this comes from the creative side. I suppose what you see in films and science fiction and stuff, I mean, science fiction always influences science and the real world. And I kind of have sort of a uh, childlike wonder of that sense, where, as a kid, I wanted all of this amazing technology. And so maybe that's why I'm passionate about creating this stuff. Um, so yeah, I think you should be looking at, or you should just be wondering, like, what's the craziest thing that you'd want to be real, and then seeing if that could be real. You should never hold yourself back from that sort of thing.
And that leads me to the next question, which is, sometimes it's really challenging to do that, right? When you are kind of let's just say boxed by different KPIs and things that you need to deliver. No, in big companies especially, that's what tends to happen. And so I often wonder, because I hear a lot also this phrase, which I do not love, and I hear it quite often, which is, we don't need to reinvent the wheel, you know. And it's almost like I want to say, but I think we do have to reinvent the wheel all the time, just because the world around us is just getting reinvented every single day. at the pace that we've never seen before. I'm very curious to hear your point of view on this in terms of, the things that exist that we need to capitalize on, that, just in kind of, okay, we've done it once, it worked, why don't we try to do again and maybe just maximize the investment that we've done into that area. And then the other side of it, which is, okay, we've done that thing once, it worked, like let's try something else, and just like let's look in the completely different direction and just try to reinvent the wheel, the next time that we do something. Like, what are your views on those kind of two extremes?
Yeah, I think for the first part, there's definitely a place to do what you know works. But I think there should always be that part of you and part of your team that is looking for the next thing. And I feel like in order to succeed in that, and that's something that we really, really champion here at FlightStory, is allowing your team to fail, and allowing in that it's allowing them the freedom to try things that might fail. Um, because when you get that one thing that succeeds, you've got the next thing and you're ahead of the game and you're first. And being first is one of the things that we really try to be.
Why first? Why being first is so important?
One of the things that this is back at Social Chain, sort of our mantra, I suppose, was first, fearless, ever changing. And it was so much so that once a month you could win the first or the fearless or the ever changing award. I actually still have the ever changing award that I took when I left. If they want to come for me, they can come for me. And I'm very competitive. And I think that's also what sort of drives me into this area. And so for us, it was, if it's either first, it's either fearless, or it's either ever changing. So they're actually quite good guidelines to put innovation against. You don't have to be all three, but if you can be one of those things, people are gonna take notice of it.
So now let's change a little bit gears to the consumer side of things, right? We've been just kind of like talking about the behind the scenes sort of processes. But from a consumer point of view, you're very close to consumers, you're very close to what happens on social, right? What do consumers want today? And what is being different about them today versus maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
I think people on social today have never been as authentic as they are today, and they look for that as well. I think they want their brands to be authentic more now than they ever have. Personally, I'm an absolute addict on TikTok, uh, unashamedly. And the second I see an advert, I will throw the phone away, essentially. I don't want anything to do with adverts. But the second I see something that's authentic, even if it is by a brand, if anything, I'm much more interested than if it was an advert. And there's still a place for adverts, absolutely. Some of my favorite pieces of content are adverts, but I think that's where it's got its own place. One of my favorite adverts is the Nike Londoner advert, and it's sort of a very cultural video that you can that represents London really well, and you go into watching that knowing that you're watching an advert, very much like watching a film. But I think on social, it's very much like it's an invasive thing, an advert, and so I think viewers want authenticity more than anything else.
Easy to say, but what is authenticity these days? Now, this is the tricky question that I always ask myself. What is authenticity? Because I have to be honest with you, Isaac. I feel like when I look at TikTok and I'm trying to actually not look at TikTok, I am ashamed of how much time I am spending on TikTok, unlike you. But I feel like I need you to keep up. That's the excuse at least. But I feel that, let's just say not even on TikTok, but in general on social, there's a benchmark of something that is working, and then everyone following that one trend to kind of jump on the wagon. That doesn't seem like authentic to me. It feels like just trying to do whatever the others are doing. And so, in this chase, in this race of becoming viral all the time, I feel like we're losing a little bit the point of what it means to be on social and what it means to be connected with other people and what it means to interact.
Mm.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the second that you start to chase a trend, you're already behind, first of all, but that's also not authentic. I think authentic on social is being you, um, no matter what else is going on, and that's how trends are started. And I think you can definitely join in on a trend if it's done in an authentic way. I think the best way to do that, in my opinion, is to sort of treat your social platform, say your TikTok page, very much like it's your social media manager's account. And I think that's a great way. I mean, I've talked to you already about Ryanair, for example. It's a great example. It's massively successful on platforms like TikTok. But I think people follow those pages, and especially Ryanair, because it is like they're following the social media manager who keeps getting away with posting these ridiculous things. And everybody's sort of in on the joke of, oh my God, is this one going to get them fired today? And it's,
Poor
yeah,
guy.
like, and so you're not really following Ryanair. You're following the person behind those posts, which is a much more relatable thing, and it's also much more on the level of people watching that post. It's just a social. It's sort of just a social media manager, just like me. So yeah, that's much more authentic. Yeah, but you don't want to. There's a great image Pollyanna on our team shared the other day of it's sort of these blue people, and one blue person puts a party hat on, and then all the other blue people put a party hat on, and then the big red person with brand on the front of them puts the party hat on, and everybody takes the party hat off. And that's exactly what chasing a trend is for a brand. It's a perfect representation.
I love that. And I will pick up on one thing that you said, which I think is very interesting. You're saying that actually you're not, well, in the most successful cases, you're not following the brand, you're following the person behind that account on behalf of the brand. So in effect, what you're saying is make it personal,
Mm,
right?
yeah, for sure.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think it's because when you're essentially following a person, everything seems more authentic because it's a person and not a brand. But also, I think that's probably one way that you can join in on a trend because it's a person. It's also
It's the
not.
person doing it, not as
Yeah,
an
it's not.
entity.
It's not an absolute science as well. This is something I've always said. Like, there's no secret formula, and anybody who tells you that they have it is just lying. Uh,
It's
like,
just testing a lot of things, right? And see what
exactly
works.
that. And also, two exact same things can go out at the same time, and one can be successful and one isn't. That's just the way that social is. So I think that's why also it's even more important to allow for failure and to allow for experimenting and just throwing things at the void that is social media.
Now I need to be a little bit the devil's advocate here, because on one side you're the innovation guy, you're like all into tech, AI, and you're like up to date with everything. And on the other side you're saying make it personal.
Mm, that's
How do the two things come together? Yeah,
that's
I'm
such a
catching
great
you on
point.
that. Now explain to me, because I want to know, how is it possible to make it personal
Mm,
while still being at the forefront of technology, which we need to, right? Because we need to keep up with what's going on out there. How do we do that?
I think one thing we say a lot is nobody should ever see your innovation, and by that we mean for example, in my latest video, where I talk about OpenAI's latest product, Sora, which is a generative video, there's a lot of footage of me talking to the camera, but I'm entirely made up of, it's an AI avatar. I will never reveal that.
Really?
Yeah, so the point of the AI avatar for me is more sort of ease and the ability to get videos out reactively and effectively and not worry about the production each time I do it. But I want that to be as authentic as possible. If for a second you could look at that and know that it was an AI video, if something gave it away, I think then it's entirely pointless. And so while we do have to be sort of looking at the future and moving and implementing all these innovative tools, I think the second that it becomes non-authentic, even though it's not authentic in the background, I think what you present as soon as that's not authentic, then it's pointless.
Yet there's so much debate about this topic, particularly, especially now with, I know by the time that maybe we're launching this episode, it will be just like all news. It's happened in the past, but OpenAI just launched Sora last week, which is their text to video platform. And it's been a huge, huge deal for everyone. And we've seen all these videos, now going viral everywhere and everyone sharing them and seeing how much progress we've had in the last 12 months since, the first videos, which were like really bad, were launched. And now seeing this at this level of detail, it sparks a lot of conversation around the ethical implications of the fact that consumers might not know what is real and what is not real. And you just talked about the fact that you wouldn't want anyone to figure out that that is not real and it should feel like you, but like what is the fine line in between knowing what something is real and looking at something that is completely fake, between authenticity through technology, or like authenticity powered through technology, and just completely fake content that is detrimental to, society, to someone who's being taken advantage of through that content.
Yeah, that's an amazing question. I think the answer is not necessarily a simple one. I think I think, I mean, I never go into this sort of thing with any ill intent. I would only ever use innovation for ease of use. But I think it's a very good question because, we're definitely approaching a time when that will definitely be the case. I mean, we already are, where people have deep faked people's bosses and got them to send money to accounts. But I think you can't avoid this sort of thing. Like you can't escape innovation. And so as long as the guardrails are there, and as long as it's sort of policed correctly, and the advancements from the protection side develop at the same time as the actual advancements develop, that's how you protect people from that sort of thing. But I don't think it should ever be the reason why we should not be developing tools like this. And from an authentic point of view, I think as humans, we'll always at some level be able to spot something that's created by AI. There are very, very good examples out there of things that I think a lot of people might not be able to tell. But I think when it comes to the actual practical uses of things like Sora, combining clips together, creating sort of a consistency between those clips, trying to create very specifics. I don't think we're quite there yet. We'll see when everybody gets their hands on it. But you can see already there's a lot of examples, even from what OpenAI have shown, that are still within that realm of uncanny valley. just not quite 100%, which I think is hilarious to look at.
Let's see in 12 months from now
That's the thing. I
where
mean,
that's going to be, though.
the big topic of 12 months from now, right now, I don't know if you've seen it, is about Will Smith
I
eating.
know, yeah, the video with the
Yeah.
spaghetti.
And
I
I
love
find
that.
it hilarious that people have looked at this new video of Will Smith eating spaghetti and they're like, wow, like the comparison to 12 months. But it's actually Will Smith eating spaghetti. He's filmed himself. And I think that's a perfect example of a huge part of this debate is about the effect it will have on the production industry and taking people's jobs. But I think for very specific things, such as Will Smith looking exactly like Will Smith and eating spaghetti in a certain way, it's always, at least for the time being, going to be easier to do that for real. Um, yeah, and I just love that people are actually thinking that that's AI right now.
I know, it's really funny to watch. Do you think that people are going to want to see AI generated content versus real content? Like if you think the movie industry, like that's one of the things that I've been really thinking about in the last few days since Sora was launched. Um, that has huge implications for the
Mm,
entertainment industry, for example, not to mention, I mean, advertising, obviously.
mm.
So everything that is creative production is going to be affected in some way or another. But if you think about entertainment, so one level further, I mean, there's already gaming out there that is fake, right? That it's not real. So it's all like made up. Are we saying that we're going to want to watch completely AI generated movies in the future?
I think it's interesting because if we ever get to the point where you could create an entire film seamlessly from scene to scene where the actors look exactly the same and they sound exactly the same and it's entirely coherent, I think ultimately viewers, if they can't tell the difference, then is there a difference? And I think the main thing there is that I think what people will really always be able to tell the difference from is how we tell stories and how we piece these things together. I don't think that's something that very quickly will be replaced by AI. I think stories are inherently a human thing. Um, and so, yeah, from sort of like from a creator's storytelling editor's point of view, AI doesn't change those things. And it's about how you use AI to tell a story, but you're still telling the story.
Hmm. I mean, at the beginning, I guess the first phase is more on the efficiency side of things,
Mm,
right?
that's right.
Speeding things up, making processes easier behind the scenes of those production processes, that we have, whether it's advertising, entertainment, whatever, movies. But eventually, it might just be the whole creation from beginning to end with fake actors, just avatars and people that are not real. And this is where I'm kind of like questioning a little bit. Is that where we're heading? And is that what we want to see?
Mm,
Because, in effect, with real actors, even if you can map out the person, AI can't really uh, think in advance how that actor will choose to interpret that character. And a real actor might choose to do different things, so it would be like a preset of things assigned to that person that AI will use and interpret, at least in the first phase, until AI can decide on its own how to interpret. You know what I mean?
yeah. And I think whatever happens, it's going to be based on how people react to what's presented to them. And so, if people enjoy an entirely AI created film and AI actors and like where we have virtual influencers today with massive followings, if people are okay with that and they enjoy that content, then we're going to see more of that ultimately. And so that's why I very much think, like I said before, you innovation waits for no one. Um, you can't stop innovation, and if it's adopted by people, you have to sort of get on board and get ahead of things and see how you can use that for
Yeah,
yourself.
and test things out. I mean, you can't judge something that you don't know. So the
Mm,
first step is that you actually use it and test it and see what it is for yourself. And I think maybe not enough people are doing it today, because that's why like all this debate is happening, in the background. Is it good? Is it bad? It's like, well, whatever, but it is happening. So we need to get on board. I don't think there's any way around it. So it's just like, I think the only question for me is like, does it take away from real creativity or does it add to creativity?
mm. I think
So
you can look at it from both sides, where it sort of removes the creativity that you get in that production process. And, a lot of things happen during the production process that are unintentional, that
mhm.
result in something that was better. Even like cost efficiencies often result in a more basic scene that ends up being more engaging. But then the thing I always like to think about is, as a creator, a small time creator without a huge budget, this technology can only empower those people, and ultimately it's leveling the playing field. And I don't think that can ever be a bad thing. I think empowering everyone to the same level is a good thing.
Yeah, and I think it sparks creativity in the sense that big budgets, will have to think differently to
Mm.
compete with the smaller companies that have smaller budgets, but now have access to, the creativity of the technology that is empowering them to create something that they were not able to create before.
And sometimes you know, I like to say the junior that started yesterday can have the best idea in the room. And so everybody should be at that table. And right now, from a production point of view, there are a lot of filmmakers and story tables that don't have access to that table. And that's what this is. It gives people a seat at the table.
I agree. I agree. What is it that you are personally most excited about in terms of what this technology is bringing? Especially maybe not what is out there right now, but what do you think it's coming? And where is this leading
Hmm,
to
that's a great
eventually?
question. When I was a kid, I'm a twin. Um, and so I've
Oh,
always
really? So the avatar is the twin.
exactly. So I've always shared a bedroom with my twin growing up. And what we used to do when we were really, really small children was, when we'd lie in bed and wait to fall asleep, we would create this imaginary world where we would just almost sort of tell each other stories of things that were happening in this world. It could be one of those weird twin things that people joke about, but it very much sort of carries through to now, where AI is sort of, for me personally, I can see it getting to a point where it allows me to simply, if I can think of something, I can make it. And that's what really excites me. If I can think of sort of a specific camera movement in a specific landscape with specific actions, and I can just sort of brain dump that onto my laptop and then see it visually right in front of me. That's just incredible for me. Um, and I don't think I can see what's coming after that, but I don't think you need to see what's coming after that if you think along the lines of, like I said in the beginning, of anything is possible. You then that way you're sort of open to whatever's next.
You know what is funny is that I always think about this with the analogy of musicians that don't know how to play their instruments or or any instrument. They're just able to interpret music, or designers that are not able to actually sketch, and they're just like draping. And there's so much, there's so many people that do that. They sort of have this imagination. They know how to kind of put things together and they create something out of it, but they don't know the technicality. They don't know the, you know, the actual technicality of making it happen, whether it's instruments or sketching or whatever that is. And to me, AI is a little bit like that. It's empowering people with true imagination. It's giving them the tools that they don't know. Like, I'm not, a developer, and I'm not into innovation in the same way that you are, but I can, with my imagination, go and put a text, a prompt in, and click enter, and then something appears out of that imagination. And I think that is an amazing power.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like taking humanity one step forward.
I think it's so interesting that you say that, actually, because I've always considered myself what I call a sort of a guerrilla innovator, where I actually don't know too much about coding or developing or anything like that. I've always had developers sort of bring my ideas to life. But I think it's that, almost like that naivety, that has allowed me to think, you know what, maybe we could do this without sort of the knowledge that, no, there's already 10 reasons why we can't do this. And so that's always been my sort of gateway to coming up with ideas that haven't necessarily been done before.
And I think that's the perfect segue to kind of end this conversation on a high note, because I want to come back to one of your first points that you made when you introduced yourself. It's about connecting all those dots in your mind that you have there in the back of your mind, that you accumulate throughout your life, and that you don't think they're going to be useful at anything at any point, but then one day you're able to connect, and then there's magic happening. And maybe AI is empowering us to connect all the dots in a new, different way, that we didn't anticipate.
That's great. Yeah, I do love that. I think that's also it. It's the same reason why you do want to involve everyone in that process. We have just launched what we call the Innovation Collective at FlightStory, which the ultimate goal is to empower every member of the team the opportunity to be involved in our innovative efforts, because everybody has that personal experience. Everybody saw that one thing yesterday that no one else saw, and so it's about bringing those. It's about combining those experiences and those things at the back of everybody's heads, and then that one person can bring that thing up, and that's the sort of the key solution to what you're looking for.
I love that. Isaac, thank you so much for taking the time to have a chat today. It was really interesting and very, very entertaining to listen about, your start into innovation and your journey. So thank you very much for taking the time today.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
It was a pleasure too. Thank you.